This is a sound test for the Cabinet meeting, March 24th, 2026.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. Nice to see you all. My name's Cameron Holloway. I'm the leader of the City Council, and we're here with all the Cabinet members as well as a lot of our council officers today and other councillors and members of the public. So thank you very much for being here. Okay, we're not expecting the fire alarm to go off today. If it does, then please leave everything and follow the exit signs on Pease Hill side of the building and exit via the Pease Hill door and assemble in St Mary's Passage. Members, just a note that when you're not speaking, please make sure you switch off your microphone, and otherwise we will get going. So I'll start off by asking all Cabinet members to introduce themselves and state their portfolios. Councillor Nestor, would you like to start?
Thank you. Councillor Dr. Antoinette Nestor, and I'm Cabinet Member for Culture, Economy and Skills.
Councillor Moore.
Councillor Rosie Moore, Cabinet Member for Climate Action and Environment.
Councillor Simon Smith, Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources.
Councillor Lawrence Marr, Cabinet Member for Nature, Open Space and City Services.
Councillor Rachel Wade, Deputy Leader.
Councillor Jerry Bird, Cabinet Member for Housing.
Thank you very much. We will also have, they're just arriving, we have Councillor Anna Smith as well.
Councillor Anna Smith, Cabinet Member for Communities.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. And is Councillor Todd Jones Councillor Todd Jones is also about to join us. Great, thank you very much. Okay, apologies for absence. We have one apology from Councillor Katie Thornborough. Declarations of interest. Does any member of the Cabinet have a declaration of interest they would like to make at this stage? Okay, no? All right, well, can do later in the meeting if anything comes up. Minutes. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Please can members indicate if they're happy to accept those minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting from the 10th of February 2026. They're on page 15 to 16 of your agenda packs. Yep, okay, everyone's happy. Great, thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to public questions. So we've had 3 public questions. Thank you for those. 2 of the questioners are here today, which is great. Welcome, both of you. The questions have been published and shared with Cabinet already in advance of this meeting, and so you don't need to read those out initially. You'll get a response, and then you'll have 1 minute for a supplementary question. A bell will sound at the end of your time. Then a response of up to 2 minutes will be provided. Okay, so our first public speaker is Mr. Michael Page. You're in the position, thank you very much. Could you introduce yourself and whether you're speaking on behalf of any particular organisation?
Thank you. My name is Michael Page, speaking on behalf of Hurst Park Estate Residents Association.
Thank you very much. Okay, so your question's already been sent to us. Because it's a technical question rather than a political question, I will actually get Stephen Kelly, our Joint Director of Planning, to give a response to this. Stephen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. The question relates to, I'm sure people can see it on the screen, the identification of Arbury Court Shopping Centre for nomination in the local heritage list. The nominations come to the Greater Cambridgeshire Planning Service. I have seen there is a scoring matrix that is used. There were representations that were received arguing that they disagreeing with the scoring matrix. I've had 2 meetings with the conservation officers to try and explore that, and as a consequence, I'm about to issue a decision on that matter. So we'll be taking the view shortly. The reason for the length of time is to make sure that I'm satisfied with both the scoring, but also the in the context of representations that we've received, that I'm able to clearly justify the basis for the decision. The decision is imminent on it.
Thank you, Stephen. Michael, did you have a supplementary question?
Well, yes, I received an email here 2 weeks ago from the information team of the 3C shared services saying that a decision would be made by Friday the 20th. That was last Friday. So clearly from Stephen's answer, that's still not happened. But what I can't find anywhere searchable is the background information as to representations for and against. So is there anywhere I can find representations against and see what they are? Is there any transparency to that? And Stephen, when do you expect to make this decision, and when can I find that it's been made?
Thank you, Michael. Stephen, would you be able to answer that?
In terms of representations, we don't normally publish representations in respect of nominations. There's a process that we're following, which is a kind of county-wide process. I don't think the information is in any sense confidential, so provided you just need to check in terms of any redactions, we should be able to make that information available in terms of the comments that have been received. The scoring matrix is something that the County Council have adopted, and I think that's universally applied across Cambridgeshire as an area, and the information on that will be available. I had anticipated making a decision on Friday, or before Friday, on this matter. I had wanted to see a little bit more information on the 20th Century Society website and hadn't concluded that, but I'm anticipating literally this week there will be a decision. And for the gentleman who contacted the council, I'll make sure that you get a written response to a notification of when that decision's been made.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much, Michael, for your question. Okay, the next question is from Dr. Jocelyn Scott. Again, we have your question on the screen, and this one's going to be answered by Councillor Joe Bird.
Thank you for your question. As you know, the feedback from the last consultation showed that 61% of those that responded were in favour of the redevelopment. For question A, we have gone on record that we will undertake a further consultation in the summer before a planning submission in the autumn. For your question B, there are a number of constraints and opportunities that the council need to consider, and the team will work with planners to find an appropriate development proposal that will be supported by the planners and responds to the consultation feedback. Question C. It is not appropriate to answer this question in public without considering the residents in the first instance. If officers think there is a case for extending the red line boundary, residents directly impacted will be informed first. That is being considered before this is discussed in public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Scott, sorry, Dr. Jocelyn Scott, you have a further minute for your supplementary question.
Thank you. All around Cambridge, there are signs saying no ball games allowed. And my question, therefore, is when the alternative designs come forward, as I understand that is the proposal, will the alternative designs include one that does retain the play park, where it is a wonderful green vista where ball games can be played, and also it's vital to have a paved courtyard for the children to sing carols during winter when it's preferable for them not to have their feet in wet grass, and similarly paved courtyards enable wheelchair access, pram access, buggy access, etc., and therefore my question is, will one of the alternative proposals include the grassed area where it is and a paved courtyard? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bird, would you like to respond?
As I've said before, at the moment we've got no plans set up. Once we do, then we'll make sure that everybody knows. I do know that some parks do have no ball games, but that's to each park. I can't say here now, no, there won't be a sign up saying no ball games. But we will get back to you, okay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bird. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our third question is from Andrew Milburn. He's not able to be present today, but his question is on the screen. Councillor Bird, could you respond to that question? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question again. Early development proposals at Arbury have been shared and the engagement report has been published. The team are now working through the feedback, undertaking surveys and working with planning colleagues to review the next steps. This takes time to do it properly. We have gone on record that we will consult on updated designs before a planning submission. The very strong feedback on the park, along with the support for redevelopment, has been noted in the engagement report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who came and asked public questions. Okay, next on the agenda is the draft Greater Cambridge Planning Obligations Supplementary Planning Document Adoption. That's on page 17 of the agenda. Now, Councillor Thornborough is not able to be here tonight, who would ordinarily be covering this, so we've got Councillor Wade, our Deputy Leader, and she will introduce this item. Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 5. The objective of this document is to explain how City Council will approach the negotiation of and requirements for S106 planning obligations attached to the granting of planning permission. The purpose is to speed up, simplify and support the consistent application of planning policies within the 2018 local plan into specific legal obligations relating to new developments in the S106 agreement that accompanies some planning decisions. We also needed to do the update to bring the two separate documents that we, City Council, have and South Cambs District Council have. So we have one shared document. South Cambs Cabinet agreed this update in February 2026. Just to say thank you to the planning officers for preparing the documents and holding the two consultations on the update, because there was a lot of work that's been done. The first consultation was held in November 24 to January 25, and a second consultation was held following that. The update here is the result of the second consultation. It doesn't set any new requirements for the S106. The final document is split into chapters that set out specific types of infrastructure or obligations. And it makes it very clear that each planning application will be assessed on its merits, and only those obligations applicable to the development proposed will be of relevance. Officers have details of the changes made during the consultations. And finally, I would urge you to support the adoption of the supplementary planning documents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Okay, do we have any comments or questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Todd Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's appropriate to raise this, but I've just come out of a Health Scrutiny Committee where there were representatives from primary care and also the Integrated Care Board. I raised a question and they kind of confirmed that some of the situation regarding the developer contributions and S106 calculations and the aspect in terms of supporting infrastructure related to a development, so that might be physical infrastructure, but also in terms of the primary care service, GP practices, and other facilities, supporting that additional population growth as a result of development, needs a more strategic approach, and that often primary care sector, although they are expected to look at the allocation that they are able to use, I don't think there's often joined-up thinking with how it is actually used. And if there could be a more strategic approach, perhaps working with the Integrated Care Board, their representatives are more than willing to meet with our planning service and to discuss some of these options. That would be really appreciated. It's just something that was raised this afternoon, just I thought I'd mention this discussion, as I think it's something quite pertinent given the amount of developments happening in the city and surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd Jones. Okay, anything further from Cabinet members at this stage? No? Councillor Thornborough, would you like to come in as Chair of Performance Assets and Strategy?
Councillor Porra, but it's the wrong Katie.
Sorry.
It's all right, it happens a lot. No, just to confirm that we didn't call this into scrutiny, because obviously it had been to Planning and Transport for scrutiny in its previous iteration, and we were satisfied that it would come forward to Cabinet for debate. But with my Planning and Transport hat on, I'm very supportive of this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry for getting your name wrong. Okay, Councillor Clough, online, you have indicated you would like to speak on this item. Would you like to go ahead? Sorry, Hugh, we can't hear you at the moment. Not sure why that is. We still can't hear you, I'm afraid. Very sorry about that. Maybe we can try again in a little bit. Councillor Bennett, did you indicate previously that this was an item you wanted to speak on? Oh, maybe we can't hear anyone online. Okay. We might have to move on and come back. No? Okay, very sorry about that. I think we're going to have to move on unless we're able to find a very quick solution, which looks unlikely. I'm sorry about that. If later in the meeting you would like to provide comments, then hopefully we'll be able to facilitate that. As it stands, I think we should move on with the meeting and move to the vote unless there are any further discussion points in the room. No? Okay. All right. Well, we will try to get people online into the meeting later on. As it stands, we are on to the recommendations for this item. So if we look at page 17 of the agenda pack, it's recommended that the Cabinet authorises the draft Greater Cambridge Planning Obligations SPD and accompanying equalities impact assessment, and agrees they're formally adopted subject to any changes following a Cabinet meeting, and agree that any subsequent material amendments following the SPD's adoption to be made by the Cabinet member for Planning and Transport, and that any subsequent minor amendments and editing changes that do not materially affect the content prior to consultation be delegated to the Joint Director of Planning in consultation with the Cabinet member for Planning and Transport. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think we're able to hear those online still, unfortunately. Sorry about that. Okay, in that case, those in the chamber, are you content to support those recommendations? Thank you very much. Okay, that is agreed. We will try to get comments from people online later in the meeting. Thank you. Okay, next up is item 6. This is the climate change strategy. This is on page 169 of your agenda packs. Councillor Rosie Moore, could you introduce this item?
Sorry, the paper's so big today. So I am very pleased to present our new climate change strategy for 2026 to 2031. Teams across the council have been working really hard to cut our greenhouse gas emissions from our estate and operations, while not only maintaining high quality vital services to residents, but also while introducing new services. The council has cut its carbon emissions by 51.9% since our baseline year of 2014, which includes a cut of 8.1% in the last year recorded, which is 24-25, despite in that year more gas being used nationally in the generation of electricity, which actually made it sort of harder to cut our emissions. So the work that officers and teams across the council have been doing is really paying off and making a difference, not just on our carbon emissions, but helping to clean up our air in some areas, for example, on our move to electric vehicles. So we're presenting this new strategy to run till 2031, but obviously everyone in the room will know that due to LGR, this council is unlikely to exist in its current form. And so in this new strategy, we're setting an interim target for 2028 to keep us as a council on track. But we decided to keep the strategy to run over that time to 2031 to ensure that the good work that's been put in still carries on into the unitary and to ensure our targets are maintained going forwards. So although it's a City Council strategy, it was worked on in coordination with South Cam, so our two strategies do align for future LGR. Also just for residents that things make sense and to pick up some areas that each council was doing well and to learn from each other. So we've taken new areas of focus on board, such as supply chain and procurement and community support and engagement, which is helping us to ensure a just transition as we reduce our carbon emissions. We had an excellent debate at the Services, Climate and Community Scrutiny Committee, and I think there was broad support for the strategy, but there's a number of areas of further thought to be added, which is in the papers, and some of that was also that we've been doing excellent work on cutting our emissions as a council, but what are we doing more for the city? And that is another area of focus throughout this strategy. As you read it, you'll see that there's a lot in there. There's a lot in the strategy. There's an awful lot in the action plan. Not everything is costed yet, but we know that climate change is real. It's happening. It's going to affect us all. And so we want to be bold and ambitious. And you'll see from the strategy that there are a number of golden threads. So one of those is the council's emissions, another is the emissions of the city as a whole, and then the third is having a greater focus on cooperation with different organisations and businesses around the city. And I'm very pleased to present this strategy. I welcome any questions, and thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Councillor Moore, and thank you for your work in driving this forward over many years. Are there any questions or comments from the Cabinet? Councillor Nestor.
Just a comment, really, I very welcome much this strategy, and I wanted to perhaps highlight that the work that is done with community groups is amazing. There is so much happening behind the scene that is just very, very good. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Councillor Young, would you like to come in to comment on behalf of the Services, Climate and Communities Scrutiny Committee?
I would, thank you very much. I agree completely that climate change is an issue, and the Scrutiny Committee was very supportive of this strategy. Just a couple of things to note, that there was some concern about the deliverability of the strategy if things like the city centre heat network and the civic quarter don't go ahead. Those are big projects, they're very ambitious projects, and I think it's a sort of natural evolution onto the more difficult stuff right now. So there was concern about that, and there is that the city council's own emissions are a very small proportion of the total. So there was concern that we are working together with other entities in the city and other groups to encourage others also to pay attention to their carbon footprint. So big approval of the innovative things that are happening, the efforts to tackle water scarcity, and to do as much as we can and only have offsetting as a last resort. So generally approval from the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Okay, Councillor Moore, would you like to respond to some of those?
Yes, thank you. Yes, over the last few years, we've really increased working with community groups. We used to have one group, Cambridge Climate Leaders. We split that then into two, so Cambridge Climate Leaders is actually going from strength to strength. At one point, we weren't too sure if it would really become very action-focused, but it is. And the Cambridge Climate Forum, which is all of the community groups in the city working on environmental things in the city, is an absolutely valuable resource to the City Council in terms of sort of helping us with our strategies, going through, giving us suggestions, being a good critical friend. And that's something that we want to really increase as we go forward in this strategy. We want it to be a strategy for the city, not just for the City Council. In terms of the Scrutiny Committee, absolutely, the deliverability of some of our projects is a risk, but that's because they're very big, bold, ambitious projects. In part, that shows what we want to achieve, but also it highlights that we've done the low-hanging fruit, we've done the cheaper, easier things, which is highlighted in the emissions that we've been saving. And so now, to really make a difference, we need to go forward, for example, on the district heat network, which hopefully we'll be having a good discussion about later. Around working with others, and that the council only has, yes, we absolutely are not the main emitter in the council, in the city. It's under 1%. But we have the vision and the ability to improve our services, and so it feels that that's what we should be doing for ourselves as a council, but also to show leadership, to lead by example and learn from others, and for others to learn with us, to help to push.
Hello, Mary Bennett.
The sound does work online. And that's part of our sphere of influence. It's not just about what can we do for ourselves and for others in the city, but what can we do by promoting, not just on climate change, but on everything that we do. And yes, offsetting was mentioned. We very happily, the public engagement had really excellent responses. The primary concern of people will actually be answered more by Councillor Smart's work, because the majority of the residents that replied, their primary concern was nature loss. But residents who did reply, and myself and officers all luckily were in agreement that offsetting is not the solution, which is what we've been working towards so far, and that's really for a last resort. So we do not have any plans currently for offsetting. We're still working very hard on cutting the emissions that we have, and also adapting to the climate change across the city that is already here, helping to keep Cambridge a happier, more livable and pleasant place to live for all residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Okay, I think we can move to the recommendations on this item then. They are on page 169 of the agenda. One is to note the progress made in carbon reduction and the high international ranking of the council and the city for our work to address climate change. Two is to note the outcome of the public engagement and feedback of the Services, Climate and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee, And 3 is to approve the new climate change strategy for 2026 to 2031. Are we agreed on those 3 recommendations? Thank you very much, that's agreed. Okay, at this stage, I think we've got some sound back online, so I will get Councillor Clough to see whether we can hear you and make your points about the previous item. Sorry to be doing this in a slightly odd order, but I think now is hopefully the best time. Councillor Clough?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate your for getting me back on. So, going back to the item which has already been approved, I would just like to draw the attention of Cabinet members to paragraph 4.17 of the Planning Obligations SPT, which has been just approved today. The heading is tenure mix, which states that the local plan policies for affordable housing do not set out an expected tenure split. But then it links, importantly, to Annex 2 of the Greater Cambridge Housing Strategy 2024-29, the affordable housing requirements, and states that the councils are seeking to provide consistency in tenure mix to be delivered through affordable housing obligations across Greater Cambridge. When you look at Annex 2, which hopefully is linked in the Cabinet papers, particularly at paragraph 2.8, Table 1 on page 6, I don't know whether anybody can see that, but I'll just, it seems that we are not attempting to secure more than just 3% of dwellings for social rent in a commercial development. The row for 100 houses just shows 3 in the social rent column confirms this. This seems to me to be an extraordinarily low and inequitable threshold for commercial developers to be expected, for them just to deliver 3 out of 100 dwellings. Is the Cabinet aware of this 3% number? And my question would have been, should the council be approving this SPD today, which includes such a low embedded target for social housing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clough. On the technical element of that, would one of the planning officers like to come in? And then I can also offer some further comments. Stephen?
Well, I suppose just the point to clarify that, as Councillor Clough highlights, this is the SPD itself, which you were asked to approve, cross-references to the housing strategy. I think his question is directed to the housing strategy rather than the SPD, and that is a matter that isn't before Cabinet today. I think the broad point around the housing tenure mix and split is something that, in general terms, tends to be interpreted by the housing team on a case-by-case basis with each of the proposals that come forwards, having regard to the site characteristics and the site's location and suitability for a different range of uses. But the SPD merely passports effectively and makes clear that decisions about housing tenure and mix are determined through, and it's a joint housing strategy prepared with South Cambridgeshire District Council, but passports through to the approach that is embodied in that document. I think it's probably a question for another forum about whether or not that document needs to be revised, given the comments that Councillor Clough has made.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Councillor Clough. I'd just add, so if we're looking at page 4 of the housing strategy, we've got 25% of homes on sites of 10 to 14 dwellings should be affordable and 40% on sites of 15 or more dwellings. So hopefully that's a useful figure for you. I think it's also worth noting that we as a City Council, of course, have an excellent programme of building new social housing. We all know that we've built 700 new council homes in the last 6 or so years, 8 or so years, sorry, and we've got plans for a further 1,300 in the next 10 years. So I hope that you and your Green colleagues will be supporting those, and thank you very much for raising this issue.
Cameron, could I just thank the officers who helped me today on that point, because there's been a quick investigation. So could I just thank Stephen's team, and Jonathan and Lauren for their help today, if that's okay. I'm not asking another question, I'm just thanking them, if that's okay.
That's very much okay. Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Tuff.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. All right. Sorry, that's gone in a slightly strange order, but we'll now move on to the biodiversity strategy, midterm review 2022-25, and the action plan for 2026 to 2031. Councillor Martin Smart, would you like to introduce this item?
Thanks, Chair. So there's a lot on the agenda today, not least of which comes from Rosie and me, essentially on nature. So Rosie's just laid out the climate change strategy, and I'm going to do the biodiversity strategy and the urban forest strategy. So just before I start on the biodiversity strategy, so from David Attenborough to Robert McFarlane, from Rachel Carson to Robin Wall-Kilmer to Camille Gungby, from you to me, we are all more or less very much in love with nature. Today, Cabinet is looking at biodiversity and urban forest strategies, very much all tied up with how we work with nature in Cambridge. So this item, biodiversity strategy, seeks Cabinet approval for the revised biodiversity strategy 2026 to 2031. This update fulfills our commitment to carry out a mid-term review of the 2022 strategy and reflects the significant shifts in national legislation, the adoption of the local nature recovery strategy, and the progress we've made with partners and communities over the past years. This strategy reaffirms our ambition for Cambridge to achieve a measurable net gain in biodiversity by 2031, compared with the 2020 baseline. That ambition isn't abstract. It is about creating richer, better connected habitats across the city, improving the ecological condition of our rivers and chalk streams, and ensuring that every resident has access to nature-rich, open space within walking distance of their home or workplace. The document strengthens our focus around three key themes. First, biodiversity mainstreaming, embedding nature in all council services, from planning and procurement to operations, and ensuring that council-led developments deliver at least 20% biodiversity net gain. Second, the core sites, improving the condition of our most important local nature reserves, commons and wildlife corridors through updated management plans, enhanced grazing regimes, and continued chalk stream restoration. And third, nature in your neighbourhood, enabling community and ward level action, supporting local projects and helping ensuring that every area of Cambridge has access to nature. The 2025 habitat audits show we have some sites improving, others stable, and some that need more work. This strategy responds directly to that evidence with clear, time-bound actions and an annual public reporting commitment, so we can track and share progress transparently. Finally, the strategy builds on strong partnerships. This is through the Cambridge Nature Network, our community groups, local landowners, volunteers, and regional bodies. Together, these partnerships have already delivered transformative projects like the Logan's Meadow wetlands and our chalk stream restoration work. They will be critical to delivery over the next 5 years and to meet our ambition of achieving Nature City accreditation. Cabinet approval today will allow us to continue leading the city's response to the biodiversity emergency, ensuring Cambridge becomes cleaner, more sustainable, and better adapted to future challenges, while creating a place where people and nature can live happily together.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Okay, are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members on this one? Councillor Wade.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smart. There's an awful lot of good work in this report. You mentioned nature in your neighbourhood. How does this work? How will we support residents with limited green space to get involved in local projects, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So we'll be providing targeted community support through several programmes. Nature City accreditation, which helps residents, businesses and institutions design and deliver actions that improve local spaces. Promotion of the Parks Biodiversity Toolkit, enabling communities to enhance their nearest park. even small areas, with planting, ponds or wildlife corridors. The Nature Recovery from the Ground Up programme, which will support ward-based delivery of LNRS actions over the next 4 years, focusing effort where access to green space is poorest. Support for friends, groups, volunteering, Swift boxes, neighbourhood canopy projects and community nurseries for elms and black poplars. These provide practical ways for people to participate regardless of neighbourhood constraints.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Smart, for your report. The strategy mentions annual public reporting. What's the best way for councillors and residents to track progress so we can celebrate success and spot where extra support might be needed?
So the 2026 consultation demonstrated strong support for sharing progress on our ambition. We've committed to transparent, accessible reporting. The main route will be an annual biodiversity strategy progress report, published online each spring, summarising project delivery, core habitat site condition changes, and progress against KPIs such as biodiversity net gain in our developments. We'll continue to publish regular biodiversity updates in Cambridge Matters, helping share stories of local projects and successes with residents. We'll continue to publish a bi-monthly web-based Chalk Streams newsletter, keeping councillors and communities informed about restoration progress and monitoring results. We'll work with the Combined Authority and other partners to develop shared performance monitoring towards the LNRS delivery. Together, these tools will give councillors and residents a clear year-on-year picture of what's improving and where additional focus may be needed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anna Smith.
Thanks, and just to mention that I am a member of the Friends of Cherryhinton, Coldham's Brook, so that's relevant to the question I'm about to ask. So it's great to see the strategies aiming for a measurable net gain in biodiversity by 2031. Obviously, for residents, what they want to see is what that means, partly what they want to see is what that means for them in terms of improvement on the ground. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about what will that mean for somebody in parks, streets, or particularly I'm interested in chalk streams.
So residents will see a visible place-based improvements across the city. For example, the newly expanded wetlands at Logan's Meadow already demonstrates how creating diverse habitats attracts species like water voles, otters and kingfishers, something residents can easily observe while walking through East Chesterton. We'll also see more species-rich grasslands and wildflower areas replacing closely mown amenity turf in parks and on commons, providing colour, pollinators and improved soil health. Our urban forest strategy means more shade trees and climate-resilient species on residential streets and estates, making neighbourhoods greener, cooler and better connected for wildlife. Chalk streams are one of Cambridge's most distinct habitats, so improvement there is especially meaningful. The Council's wider chalk stream project is using restoration, monitoring and citizen service science to build the evidence for a longer-term recovery of streams like Cherryhinton Brook and Hobson's Brook. So the public-facing outcome is not just more biodiversity in theory, but clearer, healthier, more natural watercourses that support wildlife and are easier for residents to value and engage with. We should see this in practical ways in parks, better meadows, wetlands, pollinator habitat, and in chalk streams like Cherryhinton Brook, more natural banks, cleaner gravels, better flow, improved aquatic vegetation, and healthier habitat for wildlife. This is what a measurable biodiversity net gain looks like on the ground.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Young, as Chair of Services, Climate and Community Overview and Scrutiny, would you like to feed back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, a lot of approval for this policy from the Scrutiny Committee. The few comments that we had were that the definition of measurable net gain should be a bit strengthened. So it seemed a bit vague to the committees that what exactly that means. Then the other kind of focus of the area was the need for the joint working with other external partners and communications with members of the public and other groups, and working together with them. In particular, we had a discussion about dog poo and how that changes the soil makeup and therefore is actually bad for biodiversity. So just some of the practical problems of moving this forward with the cooperation of members of the public. But general approval of this strategy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Smart, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. So, yes, I think you're right. In terms of the measurement of net gain, it is a complicated matter. And I mean, one of the main things on that is it does depend on what you start with in terms of what increase you get. So, you know, in planning, if you talk about a concrete site, then 20% of zero is zero. So you do need to take that into account in terms of you know, what you talk about and what you gain. But essentially, we're all, you know, we're trying to get more biodiversity, and the way we do that will be to, you know, see what we get, and if we're impressed with it, we'll do that. If we're not, we'll have to do better. In terms of external partners, that's something we do as a council. We continue to do, and we will do more of. And in terms of getting accreditation as a nature city, that's something that I've been pushing for as a cabinet member since I started in this job. And that's something that's due to happen soon. I'm not quite sure exactly when, but probably months away. It's a resident. Yeah. Sorry about that. And should be on silent, shouldn't it? External partners. And dog poo, yes. So, I mean, there was the case recently of the National Trust, was it? Or something like that, that they were banning dogs from an area close to Cambridge because of problems around dogs. We're not doing any of that. We're trying to sort of nurture dog walkers to do the right thing, basically. And it is a fact that dog poo does change the chemical nature of the soil, and it will change what grows. But we're keen to work with, as I say, dog owners rather than have any sort of, you know, carrot rather than stick, I think, is the approach that we're taking.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Councillor Young?
Yeah, just very quickly, thank you. I'd like to thank the Cabinet members concerned, actually. Councillor Smart was there, and also Councillor Rosie Moore also attended the Scrutiny Committee, so I'd like to thank them for their attendance.
Great, thank you. Okay, there's nothing more at this stage. We'll move to the vote on the recommendations. So recommendations are on page 295 of the agenda. One is to note the outcome of the midterm biodiversity strategy review, public consultation, and the recommendations of the Services, Climate and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And two is to approve the content of the midterm review of the Cambridge City Council biodiversity strategy for corporate design and publication. Do we agree those recommendations? Yes, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now on to the urban forest strategy. That is also Councillor Martin Smart.
Thank you, Chair. So this item seeks Cabinet approval for the urban forest strategy, which Cabinet is asked to approve today. The strategy provides the Council's long-term framework for protecting, managing and growing Cambridge's urban forest over the next decade. It replaces the current citywide tree strategy, which ends this year, ensuring that the Council continues to have a clear and up-to-date policy framework to guide decisions involving trees across the city. Importantly, this decision does not approve new spending and does not create new statutory ones. What Cabinet is being asked to do is to adopt a strategic framework that helps ensure tree-related decisions are consistent, transparent and evidence-based. That includes issues councillors regularly hear about from residents, such as street trees, development pressures, subsidence concerns, trees on housing land, and the role trees play in responding to climate change and overheating in neighbourhoods. The strategy reflects a continuing shift from focusing only on council-managed trees to recognising the urban forest as a whole city system, involving trees on private land, institutional estates, and the highway network, as well as council land. It sets out the principles, policies, delivery framework and performance measures that will guide how the Council protects, manages and grows canopy cover over the coming decade. In terms of governance and process, the strategy has followed the Council's normal route. Officers developed the draft using updated evidence on canopy cover. Cabinet approved the draft in September 2025 to proceed to consultation. Since then, there have been internal and public consultation with council services, partners and councillors and residents. Independent technical and legal review was also commissioned in relation to subsidence to ensure the council's approach is balanced and legally robust. Finally, feedback from the leadership team helped produce a shorter and clearer final document. The strategy was considered by the Services Climate and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, 11th of March 2026, where members reviewed the development process and consultation responses. Following discussion and questions, Scrutiny approved the strategy for recommendation to Cabinet without amendment, and only minor editorial corrections have been made since. So today, Cabinet is asked to 1. Approve the Urban Forest Strategy 2026 to 2036 and supporting topic papers. Excuse me. 2. Note the Services, Climate and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee's consideration of the strategy. And 3. Endorse the delivery framework, policies and monitoring arrangements that sit behind it. Adopting the strategy gives the Council a stable and evidence-led framework for decision-making over the next decade. It also strengthens the Council's ability to coordinate action across services, work with partners and communities, and secure external investment in the city's tree canopy. Ultimately, the strategy helps ensure Cambridge's urban forest continues to support sustainable infrastructure, nature-based solutions, plus providing healthier neighbourhoods and fairer access to nature across the city.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Okay, are there any comments or questions from Cabinet? Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you, and it's really good to see this going from strength to strength. Couple of things I wanted to ask. First of all, how this differs from our existing tree strategy, what makes this a better approach? And secondly, I wonder what this is going to mean for wards like my ward, Coleridge, where we've lost a lot of street trees. We've got some fantastic roads with street trees, but we've got a lot of roads which no longer have street trees or which never did. And how might that have an impact on quality of life in wards that need to improve their tree cover?
Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. The new urban forest builds on the existing tree strategy, which already introduced urban forestry principles and enabled work such as the Cambridge Tree Canopy Project. That foundation improved our data and engagement and supported a broader organisational shift. The new strategy takes this further, moving from a council-led approach to a whole city urban forest model. It is more clearly data-led with measurable outcomes and ward-level analysis, which is already available on the Council's tree data web pages. We are also developing a tree dashboard to bring this information together, supporting decision-making from individual householders through to land managers and planners. Crucially, the strategy recognises that most canopy sits on private land and must be influenced as well as managed. In comparison with other councils, Cambridge is among the leading group taking this approach. Local authorities such as Bristol City Council are strong on delivery and ambition. Cambridge's strategy is more explicitly structured around whole city data and long-term management and is comparable to Oxford City Council. For Coleridge in Cambridge, this is particularly relevant. The ward has seen the largest canopy gains in the city, likely reflecting the growth of younger trees. The priority now is to sustain that progress through continued planting and protecting existing trees and on focusing on growing trees to maturity, particularly to improve street presence and shade.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Todd Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I ask Councillor Smart a question about how much control we have over this strategy? For example, given that many trees will be planted in verges and highways land, and we might act as an agent for the county council, for example, in terms of maintaining those trees. So what work will be done with partners and others in terms of this strategy going forward? Thank you.
So we don't control the trees in Cambridge, of course. That's precisely why the strategy takes a whole city approach. The council directly manages only a proportion of the city's tree canopy. A significant amount sits on private land, institutional estates and the highway network, where ownership and liability sit elsewhere. What the strategy does is clarify how the council exercises leadership and works in collaboration or partnership with those landowners and agencies. It helps ensure decisions are consistent, evidence-based and defensible, particularly where residents experience the impacts. So it's not about coordination, so it's about coordination and influence, not assuming control over assets we don't own.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Nesta.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on page 524, where it mentioned the principles, which you have 5 principles, and they're very important, especially number 2, which is climate resilience, and number 5, environmental justice. And within number 5, I'm just sort of curiosity, it says in relation to the uneven distribution of trees throughout Cambridge, and the proactive preservation of existing trees and new planting needs to be prioritised in areas with lower canopy cover. So how is that going to be done? Perhaps something that the officers may be able to answer.
Yeah, you slightly lost me in the detail there, to be honest.
Well, in summary, it's basically, how the areas with lower canopy cover are going to be prioritised.
So Alistair Wilson is here. He is not the appropriate officer, but a couple are not here today. So maybe, Alistair, you can help me a bit.
So if I get myself onto difficult water, I have actually got Joanna online as well to help with that. So the questions about climate resilience is about canopy cover and about demographics across the city. So we do have a very strong database of data in terms of the canopy composition, in terms of the types of trees, the size of those trees and the canopy cover. What we also have is the type of land mass that's in those different wards. So for instance, in the west of the city, we've got bigger gardens, whereas the east of the city, we've got smaller gardens. So we can do a lot of information, with that information, we can do a lot of policy decisions, particularly around choice, where to plant it, volumes, and in some cases, you may have different approaches to different areas. So encouraging people to plant in gardens in the west of the city, encouraging people to plant in open spaces or communal spaces in the east of the city. So there's a whole range of things we can do. There's options as well in terms of species choice. So in terms of getting that climate resilience, it's not just about the volumes, it's also about the types of trees, the size of trees, the locations of trees, and the impact they create in those spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Councillor Young, did you want to comment on this?
Yes, we reviewed this at the Scrutiny Committee, generally approved of it and had no comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bennett, did you want to come in on this?
I hope that I can come in on this. Can you hear me in the chamber?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm commenting on this mainly to put on record our appreciation of the prompt and comprehensive support of a tree officer team in countering various threats to our trees, and our support for the urban forest strategy. The strategy sets out various high-level ideas for prevention of tree loss, which is extremely distressing to residents as well as to councillors and officers. And I was very pleased to hear Alistair Wilson's response, talking about some of the detailed guidance that could be provided to residents on appropriate planting strategies, and also seeing the mention of guides to good practice on building near trees in the appendix report. Yet I'm not really finding that this information is getting through to residents what can we do that we're not already doing to make sure that people are getting the right information on what trees to plant, where to plant them, and know where to go quickly when there's a threat to a tree. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Smart, would you like to comment on that?
Was the question more information? I'm not quite sure what
The question was about how the information could be distributed to residents.
Alistair?
I can take that question. So the strategy itself is deliberately higher level, and it does have a range of principles which Councillor Nesta talked on, but one of them is about planting more. So the question is the right question in terms of how, for many residents, the question is going to be practically right tree, right place. So there's going to be a range of questions from residents in terms of, am I doing the right thing? So we do have on our internet pages some fairly good guidance around tree planting and locations and choice. Certainly something we can consider and how the information is given more prominence and visibility. And I think there's certainly merit in taking this forward with the tree team in practical terms. We have got the additional resource secured through the budget setting round in terms of to help us with the implementation and the accelerating the outcomes we want from the strategy. So it's something that's fairly simple for us to do from an officer perspective.
Thank you, that's a great answer.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett, and thank you, Alistair. Councillor Smart, is there anything more you would like to say before we move on to the vote?
Well, it's very kind of you, Chair. I know we've got a busy agenda. I'll only be a minute, but I'll just say that planting trees is a long-term project. It's interesting how, you know, when you look back at garden designers of the past, like Gertrude Jekyll and her planting of gardens and trees, and it was a project that would go into the future after her death. And I hear our officers talking about planting trees and talking about 50 years into the future. And it's fascinating to think about that what we do today, this strategy is maybe only a decade. And we're talking really about years and years into the future beyond that. And that's planning for Cambridge residents in the future. They are our residents, but they are our children and our children's children. And that's important. We want to make a city that's as beautiful as the city I saw when I first came to Cambridge 35 years ago. I thought of it as a leafy city then, and it still is, and I want it to be that way in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Very well said. Okay, you've already set out, Councillor Smart, the recommendations at the start of this item, so I won't repeat those, but they are on page 515 of the agenda packs. Do Cabinet members agree those recommendations? Yes, that is agreed. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll move on now to item 9, the City Centre Heat Network. Councillor Rosie Moore, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you very much. So this is exactly one of those big, ambitious, possibly a bit risky projects that was mentioned in regards to our climate change strategy, that there's a lot to be gained here if we achieve it. And so I'm very pleased to be presenting here us hopefully progressing on to the next stage with your support. So what we're asking for here is to commit £600,000 from the Climate Change Fund to progress to the next stage. We've completed the feasibility study. Here you're presented with the outline business case, which has been worked on for the last couple of years. It is a complicated collaboration. So not only is the project itself complex, but the large-scale collaboration between ourselves, the City Council are leading on the project, but we're working with both universities, the County Council, and colleges in the city centre. So it's not just the sort of complexity, the technological complexity of the project, but it's just aligning and getting support from all of our partners. So that's 19 strategic partners. And so far, we've received 15 letters of support. In fact, at the beginning of this meeting, there were 14 letters of support. So while we've been here, we've received one more. And so the other 4 that we have, Jacques has been told that the 4 more are coming. So that's really testament to the very hard work that's been put in by Jacques and others to for this collaboration. And actually, I think we're very lucky. This is something that, although it's difficult, is perhaps easier because it is Cambridge, because we've got a small city centre and we do have good partnership working and long-term investment in the city centre by the colleges, the 2 universities, and obviously the councils. So this project, if it goes ahead, it could have the first connections in 2030, which would really, for ourselves, get us on track for achieving our target of being a net zero carbon council. We would be decarbonising our own city centre buildings, but also ARU and many of the heritage and hard to retrofit buildings of the university and the city centre colleges. The main question received around this project is, why are we starting a city centre district heat network for the councils and colleges? Why not residents? Well, it's exactly because of the high concentration of the high energy requirements of the city centre that makes this project viable and for the business case to stack up. However, we are not short on ambition here, so we do aim, once we've got the full district heat network for the city centre up and running, we would hope to be progressing to the next steps to extend to residential areas and to other parts of the city. So it's quite a big first step, but this we see is just a first step. And this approach to focus on the city centre has absolutely been supported by the recently agreed Cambridgeshire County Council LEP, which is the Local Area Energy Plan, which shows that Cambridge City Centre is the highest priority area in the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, due to exactly that, the intensity of the urban buildings. So we will need, this proposal is to have 3 energy centres, 2 based on air source heat pumps and 1 on water. The benefits of the one for the water will also be to reduce some of the heat in the river, which will have nature benefits. And for ourselves and those initial partners, we could see 93% carbon reduction over 40 years in those core buildings in the current design, which is absolutely transformational for ourselves and for the city going forward, thinking about the climate crisis. This is exactly a good example of the collaboration that we're aiming to work on in the strategy that we voted on earlier, that we supported, and it shows what's possible when we work with others and the benefits that can be achieved, not just in our carbon reductions, but also financially. So for ourselves as a council, we could see over £1 million of savings by doing it collaboratively with our partners rather than going alone and decarbonising our own buildings. As you'll see, what we're proposing is to progress with a joint venture. This is a balance of maintaining control over the project and ensuring that carbon reduction is prioritised, whilst also reducing risk. We did look at, or the team looked at a number of options, and so the joint venture is the one that the team will be working towards in this next stage. And the City Council will be having a 51% stake in that. So we have been throughout this project the lead partner, and we would continue to be. And just finally to say that the government is introducing heat zoning. Cambridge is their priority area for the whole of Britain, and once heat zoning is introduced, it would require new and large developments to join up to any district heat network that's set up. And so if we're not the ones leading on this and going with it, we might then in time instead have to join up to somebody else's. So it's much better to be working collaboratively with our partners in the city, ensuring that we get the best financial and carbon reduction benefits for the city and for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. This is a really exciting, really ambitious project. Thank you. Okay, any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Smart.
Yes, I'm totally excited by this. It's obviously a future thing, but we can really do some good things in Cambridge with this project if we manage to get it off the ground. And as Rosie said, it's really exciting to, well, firstly, the way that the project is developed, I think is good, the way the officers have done this. So it's a bit hesitant at the start, but now we've got a couple of air source and one water source heat pumps. I think this is the right mix. We've got the river already. It makes sense. As Rosie said, it's good for the river to cool it down a bit as well, because it's too hot with climate change. So taking a degree or so probably off the river's temperature will be good. And also I'm excited about the possibilities of returning the water to the river and creating some other different sorts of environments aside from just grass, where water flows across back to the river. That could be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anna Smith.
Just to say, I think this is incredibly exciting. We need bold projects like this if we're going to really start to address the climate crisis in a meaningful way. And this could also be, in the long term, a money saver too. But the most exciting thing about it is that this is an environmentally friendly isn't a strong enough word. This is really powerful in terms of helping us to address the climate emergency, and I'm really excited that we're looking at this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think this project speaks to the convening power of the council. There's one thing to be delivering day-to-day services, but there's another to be a community leader. And this is community leadership at scale. And as Councillor Anna Smith has just said, it takes big and bold decisions and ideas to transform the city. And this is a outstanding example of that. I think bringing together so many different colleges is quite remarkable, because they're not renowned for cooperation generally, as members of the colleges have indicated to us. But this is really an amazing project, and it means that a whole stack of listed buildings in the city will be going to make it possible to preserve their heritage, but to decarbonise them as well. And as Councillor Moore has just said, this is the beginning of, it's a kind of like a landmark scheme, because it's the beginning of a bigger infrastructure that can be built out, and it's going to be fantastic that the partners will be able to have control of that rather than a for-profit organisation coming in and sucking money out of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Porritt, would you like to comment on this?
Thank you very much. This came to scrutiny and Councillor Moore and officers kindly attended. Broadly, echoing what people have said, this was seen as a very innovative and exciting project. I know we haven't quite got the link to the actual recommendation, so we've got the final ones, but there were some points which I think Councillor Moore has heard, but for the record, I'll just run through them. So the governance, we talked about getting the arrangements right, and asked for updates when the Green Heat Network grant came through. And we talked about looking at the KIP for an example of governance which involves elected councillors. So that was something I hope the Cabinet will be mindful of. And obviously linking with our partners, including South Cambs, because obviously with the unitary coming forward. For the business case, Obviously, we asked to monitor costs. You kind of expect scrutiny to say that for every project, but particularly this one. That we wanted some clarity on the use of gas boilers over time and the reduction versus the financial benefits. Coordinating with utilities, obviously, and obviously the future expansion possibilities, which are potentially really powerful, could be kept under reviews, and also noting the consequences of not doing it, which I think Councillor Moore has referred to, in the sense that with the requirement to connect, you know, we're not going to not have heat networks. I think we had a comment about net present values and the hurdle that it's set to 0. I just asked Cabinet to make sure they're mindful of that with going forward, which I think officers and I think Councillor Moore took on board. And wider risks, we talked about utility trenches. This is a popular subject when we're digging up roads. Local government reorganisation, obviously making sure our partners are on board, grid capacity, and obviously making clear about any potential cost overruns and licensing requirements for things like the river extraction. And the recommendation was that Cabinet kept these risks under review as the project's going forward, which I think Councillor Moore assured us that we would. Communications, again, it was noted that this is a really innovative, internationally leading project. And I think scrutiny were very clear that we led on the front foot for that, making that clear to residents about what the benefits will be, you know, so that the comms strategy needed to be really clear about that, you know, so residents understand the impact, and that we could learn lessons from other projects, either locally or more internationally, of, you know, what's gone right for them and wrong. And mitigation strategies, just to ensure that as and when it moves to the project's build-out stage, that we've got strategies to make sure the city centre and other utility works are coordinated, and obviously to consistently engage with elected councillors on this. But broadly, everyone was supportive of the recommendations that you're looking at tonight, subject to obviously those comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Very helpful comments. Councillor Moore, would you like to respond to some of those?
Yes, so if I go, well, I'll go to the committee first. So if you, on page 592.214, some of the comments from committee were taken and the report was edited to make note of those. Some of those were more in relation to later stages, for example, concerns around the digging up of the roads, which absolutely are noted and taken for the future, but sort of aren't, unfortunately, we're not quite at that stage yet. Yes, there was a lot of support for it, and mentioned that our comms needed to be not just thinking about residents, but the whole wide world. I feel that was what I took from that committee. And in terms of learning lessons from others, in fact, a group of us from the council and other partners, and also I believe another councils in Britain who are working on district heat networks, have been invited by the Danish embassy to go and visit a couple of their district heat networks, which are much more well established and are just sort of every day to them. It's just the norm. And so we're going, a few of us are going in April to exactly learn those lessons. Then on your, so I forgot to mention another vital partner, and one of the recommendations is to apply for another government grant. And so far we have been very successful in receiving government grants which have helped us with the feasibility and the stages that we've completed up to now. So it's very important that we work and we get the support of government, because that has helped us with the funding up to now. In terms of the finances and the benefits, one of the benefits which unfortunately we're really seeing the need for now is energy security. So it does mean that in future we would have our own energy in the city centre and hopefully extend that. And at the moment the cost of energy is tied to gas, but I would hope that at some point in possibly the very near future that is changed, and so there could also be then financial benefits on the cost of the energy provided by the district heat network. And there was sorry, I've written colleges, but I don't remember what the question was. It's not very...
Was it about the fact that the colleges are working together and working with us on this?
Yes. I mean, yes, they are. Oh, that was it. Well, obviously, in our report, we've got about the benefits to us in working in collaboration, but obviously those benefits are felt by all of the other partners. So we're all gaining by working together, despite the additional work required to provide that collaboration. But it's really positive, and I hope that you'll support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we can move to the votes then. So we have the recommendations on page 589 and 590. First one is to support the next steps in this transformative project to decarbonise a significant portfolio of council and academic estates in the city centre of Cambridge. The second is to support the drawdown of £0.6 million from the council's climate change fund to fund pre-commercialisation activities. The third is to delegate authority to the Assistant Director for Development in consultation with the Director of Economy and Place and the Chief Finance Officer to submit a bid to the Green Heat Network Fund in 2026 to bring forward a city centre heat network. That would require the council to enter into an updated memorandum of agreement with academic partners and the county council, and to appoint a specialist delivery contractor to undertake design and commercialisation plans. Are we agreed with these recommendations? Yes, thank you very much. That's all agreed. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Moore. Okay, I think this might be a good time to take a break, and then we will come back at 6:45. So people have time to have some dinner if they want to. start again. Thank you, everyone. So the next item on the agenda is item 10, the transition plan for the Guildhall and Corn Exchange. Councillor Antoinette Nesta, could you introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. So the plan before us is about ensuring that Cambridge does not lose its cultural heartbeat during the period when the Guildhall and Corn Exchange must close for essential redevelopment. Together, these venues welcome more than 200,000 people a year. They support live performance, comedy, talks, graduation, civic ceremonies, and major conferences. They're part of the everyday life of the city. Without a managed transition, we would face a 2-year gap in that provision, with real consequences for our communities, our cultural partners, and the wider city economy, including an estimated 21.6 million in secondary economic impact. The report sets out a practical and proportionate way to protect that ecosystem. It asks us to progress the temporary venue option to planning and preparatory procurement so that we keep our options open. It is a measured step, not a commitment to delivery, but it ensures we are ready to support audiences, promoters, and staff throughout the closure period. It is the step that keeps the city moving forward while the civic quarter takes shape. We have looked very carefully at the alternatives. Doing nothing carries the greater risk. The report is clear that we would see audience drift, promoter disengagement, and a slower recovery of 12 to 24 months once the venues reopen. Existing venues in the city simply cannot meet the scale, technical requirements, or conference function currently delivered by the Corn Exchange and the Guildhall. Facing the works would add around 1 million in additional cost and still require full closure. There is no gain from that option. And while a high-quality modular venue is attractive in principle, it requires long-term capital and site decisions that sit outside the immediate purpose of managing this transition period. The temporary venue option is the one that best protects the city during this period of change. A demountable venue of around 1,000 capacity, operating for 18 months, would allow us to retain around 50 to 60% of the Corn Exchange program. It would maintain visibility in the city centre, preserve promoter and client relationships, and protect the specialist staff whose expertise will rely on when the refurbished venues reopen. The early work required, which is around £60,000, sits entirely within the 1 million earmark reserve already approved by Council. And crucially, today's decision does not commit us to delivering the venue. It is simply ensuring that the option remains viable ahead of the final civic quarter decision in September. Chair, this paper is not about safeguarding the people, this paper is about safeguarding the people, partnerships, and cultural life that make Cambridge who we are. It keeps our options open, protects the relationships and expertise we will rely on when the city civic quarters reopen, and ensures the city does not lose momentum during this period of change. It is a practical step, but also a commitment to our communities and to the future we're building together. I commend the recommendation to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nesta. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Nesta, for bringing this paper and all the work that's gone into this. And to pick up on your point, it's a pragmatic approach to ensuring that we retain and give some consistency to our expert staff at the Corn Exchange. And I think that's a very valuable message that needs to go out. But thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Smart.
Councillor Nestor, you asked me a question, so I'll ask you a question. So it's not too difficult. So in my experience of venues and booking venues and doing events at venues, which I've done a bit of in my life, just small scale, I'm aware that venue loyalty is quite a big thing, that people, it's not just the event that's on, it's where it happens, and that's sometimes what makes people go to that place. So I presume for this it's a different kind of thing, because it's a temporary venue, and that will be sort of programmed into the sort of advertising and mediation of the venue, and sort of wanting to get people to go to that temporary venue in a different way that we would have people go to the Corn Exchange and the Guildhall. Is that something that you can talk about at all, or maybe officers can, if that's a thing that's been considered? I presume so.
Councillor Nestor?
Thank you very much. Councillor Wade, yes, thank you very much. It is the pragmatic approach, and that's what people need, basically need to understand, that it's just temporary and it's just sort of the best way forward. And Councillor Smat, yes, and I just will refer to, there you are, okay, to Sam.
Thank you. Hopefully I've got your question right. I think as we keep exploring the options for where a temporary venue can go, then the consideration of how we publicise that and how people get there and the consequences of not having it where it is right in the city centre all will be taken into account. Is that what you're alluding to?
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Simon Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I've looked at this in detail, and I think there's a very strong value from any case. And the main points are set out at 4.2 on page 632 of the agenda pack. I think it's really important that there is continuity, and the value comes from not just from the continuation of cultural events in the city for the wider public, but it's also about making sure that we retain and utilise the skilled staff that we have, and our key relationships with the people, the agents who book the venue. And this is critically important, because when the Corn Exchange reopens, we want to get it fully programmed, and so we can build the audiences back to, well, higher than they are currently. So I'm really a strong supporter of this proposal, and I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, did either of the scrutiny chairs want to comment? No? Okay. Councillor Bick, as Leader of the Opposition, would you like to comment on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a question, if I could come back with, I've heard the answer. First, I wanted to ask about the term reputational risk or reputational damage, because that appears frequently in the report and appears to be doing quite a lot of heavy lifting behind this recommendation. So if we are talking about reputational damage of a temporary facility not being provided, who is that damage to, given the council would be actually making a major investment in the upgrading of its Corn Exchange performing space to make it more attractive both to performers and to audiences? I'm just struggling a bit to see how those circumstances amount to people waiting for it to actually have happened to create reputational damage. And I just wonder whether the Cabinet member regards the Arts Theatre, for example, as having suffered reputational damage because it recently invested in its facilities and closed for a period before reopening. Just like to understand your views on that, and also what certainty do we currently have that audiences and performers would want to come to a temporary venue in the numbers that would be required. I take it that the 50 to 60% number is about how many could be fitted in, but it's more a question of how many would want to go and whether we know anything about that.
Thank you, Councillor Bick. Councillor Nestor, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll see if then if Sam wants to add anything else. In relation to the reputational damage, I would say it is not really a discretionary cultural add-on that we're doing. What we're doing is a risk mitigation measure directly tied to the civic quarter business case. The report is clear that doing nothing creates the highest financial and reputational risk, including audience loss, promoter disengagement, and a 12 to 24-month delay in recovery. So the temporary venue protects the council's investment, the city's cultural ecosystem, and the 21.6 million in secondary economic activity. So even though there is a risk, I think the reputational risk would be worse if we did nothing, basically. And in relation to the audience, I think the audience would understand why we're doing this. And I don't know if Sam, do you want to add anything else?
Probably just a couple of reference points to your second question. So we have taken a visit to Orchard West down in Dartford, who have had to, or built a temporary venue for different reasons, and we've looked at adjusting some of our modelling to reference what they do. So the 50 to 60% is not just a capacity point, though we would be looking at a reduced capacity than the 1,600 we've got at the Corn Exchange currently, but it's also a programming point. It would be unlikely that we could fill the same programme that we have at the Guildhalls and the Cornex with any temporary venue, no matter where it is. So it's a blend of the two and a reflection that a venue with similar circumstances can carry out and perform in the way that we're modelling.
Thank you, Sam and Councillor Nestor. Councillor Bick, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow that with a comment, a contribution really. My group is sceptical about this proposition. I think there isn't enough evidence here to justify agreeing to taking something to a planning application and paying what it takes to take it to that place. I think the major exercise on the Civic Quarter project is to rein in the existing costs of the overall project and to improve its payback. It is not proven here that putting an extra $1 million on top of what is already a considerable cost wouldn't actually increase the risk rather than reduce it. At least if there is, the evidence is not here in this report. And so I'm certain degree open-minded, it may come, but I think the main task ought to stay on reducing the cost and increasing the payback of the basic project. And I think for those other things that have been mentioned about the speeding up of the relaunch after a closure, there are potentially less costly and less risky ways of achieving or mitigating against the any potential slowing down of the speed of return. So I think it's a bit premature, at least, to bring this forward. And we're a bit sceptical about whether the evidence can be produced, but it's absolutely critical that we remember that this is not being debated as just £1 million. It's £1 million on top of an already very expensive project that we want to try and reduce the cost and increase the payback from.
Thank you, Councillor Bick. Well, I think it's important to bear in mind that on the one hand, we've got the financial case for, as you mentioned, trying to increase the speed at which the Corn Exchange, once reopened, can ramp up to full capacity and to a higher full capacity than previously. but also we do have a responsibility as a council for protecting and supporting our council staff, as well as for supporting our local economy. So we're trying to balance a mix of objectives here. I wouldn't say it's premature in the sense that if we do want to do this, we've got to be pretty quick in bringing it forward, given the timelines that we have on the Civic Quarter project. But thank you very much for your contributions. Councillor Nesta, would you like to add anything?
Yes, just to clarify, actually the 1 million is an earmark reserved already approved in the 26-27 budget, so it's nothing like, it's not another million extra. And the early calls that we're asking to authorize today are actually modest. It's around £60,000 and all within that provision. So it's a proportionate, time-limited intervention to protect a much larger long-term investment. And like basically the decision, this is just to go into it, and the decision will be actually in September rather than now. This is what at the moment is just authorizing this like £60,000. And I don't know that Sam, would you like to clarify it? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Nesta. I can see Councillor Anna Smith, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I did. There were a couple of reflections that I wanted to make based on when culture was in my portfolio area some years ago, particularly since when I was looking after the Corn Exchange, and culture was the time when we brought Cambridge Live back in-house when it was on its knees. And bringing it back in-house allowed our expert officers to revitalise what's happening at the Corn Exchange and what's happening more generally in Cambridge Live. So one of the things I'd say, and I don't say this lightly because I'm not the kind of person that says, oh, well, you know, if the officers say so, we must do it. I think my record on the council shows that I can exercise really strong scrutiny of the advice we get. But in this situation, we have experts in cultural production advising us that it is better for us to have a temporary venue that helps us have a transition. I think that's really important for us to listen to, because the people who are advising us on that are the people who were able to revitalise the Corn Exchange and our cultural offering when it came back in-house. I think that's really important. The other side of this is we have companies that come regularly. I appreciate not every company may be able to be housed in this temporary venue, but it allows us to keep that continuity. That's really important for when we move back in, so we still have a programme we can pull back. You mentioned, Chair, it's good for the economy. It's also good for the people of Cambridge. I think the thing we need to remember here as well is that we have an in-house cultural offering because we as a council believe that it is important that we can provide our residents with something that is of really good quality. And I don't think our residents would thank us if we basically said, yeah, in the future, you had a kind of jam tomorrow approach. In the future, you're getting something improved. But in the meantime, we're removing provision. I think we have a duty to ensure that there is a continuity of provision for the people that we serve in this city.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Simon Smith.
Well, it seems as if the Liberal Democrats want to cancel Christmas like Cromwell. I think entertainment and culture is part of the life of this city, and it contributes substantially to our quality of life. I think the recommendations in front of us, I will be supporting them. But of course, we will be coming back later in September for a decision on the procurement piece. And I think in the meantime, we do have a strategic steering group for the Civic Quarter. And we've got cross-party collaboration on all aspects of the scheme. As Councillor Bigg did say, we are looking to bear down and control the costs of the scheme. We all supported his amendment to the motion when we agreed to proceed with this. And I am absolutely in full accord with him that is what we should be doing to maximise value for money and keep control of the costs. So I think between now and then, we ask the officers to exemplify their advice and build up the case, because some of these, the justifications for this decision are, I would say, very difficult to quantify, and some of the elements of it you can't actually put a price on. So I think if there's further work done and it's reported through the strategic steering group, we can arrive at a place in September where a fully considered decision can be made.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Nesta, is there anything further you'd like to add?
Well, not like, and thank you for your reflections. And just I wanted to say as well that you know, perhaps it seems too rushed, but at the same time, like the timeline is driven by the construction program. So if we don't progress now, the option is lost entirely. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I also wanted to say that thank the officers, because they've done so much work behind the scene, and you know, sort of basically it's not seeing once the report is done, but they put like a huge amount of hours on it. So thank you to Sam and the team for it. And just that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we will move to the vote on the recommendations then. So they're on page 629 of your agenda packs. There are quite a few, so I won't read them all out, but you can read them on that page. So do we agree to the recommendations? That's agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to item 11, which is consultation on the establishment of a centrally led urban development corporation for Greater Cambridge, page 647 to 650. All right, I'll be introducing this one. So on Thursday, we had a full council meeting where we had a good discussion on this topic. We heard a range of views from councillors. There was quite a degree of agreement on several of the elements of these proposals, and there were also some areas of disagreement. We've got a summary of that feedback in our agenda packs, which has been helpfully put together by Stephen. Thank you for doing that. Just to remind viewers and those of us here where we're up to with this, so the government's brought forward proposals for a development corporation for Greater Cambridge, so that's Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council, the whole of those two areas together, and it would be looking to accelerate economic growth in and around Cambridge for the next 25 years. That is a very far-reaching set of proposals. Development corporations have been used in several other contexts previously, usually either new developments, so new towns, somewhere like Milton Keynes, or they've been urban regeneration. This is quite a different type of project, and it's across a much larger area than most, in fact, all previous development corporations that we've seen in this country. However, there was a feeling amongst councillors that there was a place for a development corporation in terms of supporting with infrastructure, so physical infrastructure for water, sewage, transport, the electricity grid, so those big topics that we as a local authority don't have the powers or really the capacity to deal with, but government and the development corporation may be able to have a very positive impact on. And we also felt that social infrastructure was a very important part of ensuring that people who are living in and around Cambridge benefit from the growth that is happening here, and that it is sustainable in the sense that people are able to live here with a high quality of life. They're able to access schools, hospitals, green spaces, arts and cultural facilities. Those haven't always kept pace with growth to date, and so if a development corporation could help with that, that would be excellent. We did, however, have, I think, unanimous, serious concern about the proposals to take planning powers away from the local authorities. So there are two elements to that. One is plan-making powers that would, under the current proposals, be taken after the adoption of well, they would be taken technically straight away, but then not used until the adoption of our next local plan, which would be around 2029. There's then the planning determination powers. So that, as it stands in the consultation, would be for larger sites. So the development corporation would be determining planning applications for larger sites, not clear at what level that would begin. And then the local authority would continue to determine smaller planning applications. Now, there was, I think, unanimous objection to that in the room. We felt that was unjustified, And there were two main elements to that. One is the importance of local democratic accountability and the importance of enabling local voices to be heard within discussions about the future of the city, and that a local authority with directly elected members is the best vehicle to do that and to manage the types of compromises and different considerations that come as part of the planning process. The second was the fact that our planning service is working very well under democratic control. We've got 37,000 new homes that are already approved but haven't been built out yet by developers. We've got a very ambitious local plan that we're in the process of developing and looking to submit towards the end of this year. And we also, I would argue, because of our local democratic oversight, have a very significant amount of local input from residents into our planning process. So with our local plan, our last consultation, which was December and January, we had 100 separate events in that period where we were hearing residents' views, as well as the opportunity to submit comments online and through other means. So that's a level of engagement that you just would not get with an unelected body. So those were some of the key concerns. There were lots of other issues raised. There are some of those detailed in the report that you've got in front of you. These are very far-reaching proposals. Just to sum up, I want to encourage anyone who is listening to respond to this consultation. It is open to all to respond. We as a City Council will be submitting a response, but any individual can do so too. This will have a big impact on the future of Cambridge. So go to the government website, type in Greater Cambridge Development Corporation, and you should be able to find it. Respond by the 1st of April. So, are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members, first of all? Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for giving me the time to speak now, because I wasn't able, because of a prior commitment, to attend the meeting last Thursday. So, really, it's just to express my support for many of the comments made at that meeting. Like many, I'm very much aware of the significant dangers of unrestricted growth. We've all seen what happens when there aren't controls or master planning in place for growth. You get places like Northstowe, where they are only just talking about getting a shop. How many years after? I think 5, 6 years after people have moved in, where they've only just finished off a community centre, where it's just been little patches of land sold off. And you can't blame the individual people building a house. It's because nobody is master planning, nobody is thinking about the broader infrastructure. And we have to avoid that kind of thing. And so I welcome the fact that there is funding coming to ensure that we get proper infrastructure, whether that's transport infrastructure, whether that is about water, whether that's about energy. And I'll mention skills and jobs as well in a moment, because that's something I particularly wanted to emphasise. But like others, I'm very concerned about our loss of planning powers. You know, we have, I know Councillor Thornborough isn't here to say this, so I will say it. We have an award-winning planning team who have been absolutely groundbreaking in what they are able to achieve, really showing what good quality planning can look like. We have a planning committee that absolutely cannot be called NIMBY. They scrutinise each application very carefully and according to very sound planning reasons. We have an emerging local plan, which is going to be one of the most progressive, environmentally friendly and community-focused plans in the country. And we're doing that across 2 councils of 2 different political flavours. So losing that planning power, losing that democratic accountability, I think is deeply concerning. So I'm very supportive that we are raising our concerns around that. I did also want to just highlight, because this has been raised to me by several stakeholders, but also it's close to my heart as a former teacher, and that's about making sure that through all of this we are pushing for an important skills and jobs infrastructure to be embedded here. And that's not just about getting someone to a college or work through transport, although clearly really want to see that good quality transport, including our buses, is as good as they can be. But this is also about that broader infrastructure to ensure that as opportunities come, if we're getting economic growth, that it's people in our city and around our city who are able to benefit from that, that we are able to empower people, to train people up, and to make sure they can get to those really good jobs. So just want to be very sure that we're also really highlighting that in the response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Any further comments? Councillor Smart.
So one thing that's been mentioned quite strongly is democratic deficit with regard to this matter. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a bit more about that. But particularly, I suppose, my experience has been with planning committee, which is a somewhat niche area of planning, as it's only a very small percentage of the total number of applications that are actually approved or not approved by planning. I mean, having said that, residents do often think about planning committee as being the, where planning is. And so that has to be borne in mind, I think. But in a way, what we do in planning committee is not so much, in some ways, to do with being elected by residents. It's about performing a task, in my opinion anyway, that we do with regard to national planning policy framework, local planning policies, and so on, neighbourhood plans. So we don't just do what we like. If we did or do, and we have done sometimes, then it gets appealed and we lose lots of money for the residents. Bad thing to do. But the thing is we have to abide by those rules, and that's where I feel that the democratic deficit argument somewhat falls away, in my mind, in that particular area of planning. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that anymore in terms of how it might be different, supposedly, with a development corporation. I'm not quite sure, because I know that a development corporation would have a planning committee as well, with elected members on, but maybe they wouldn't all be elected, possibly. But it depends.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. So, on plan making, I think the argument is clear for the democratic deficit in the sense that it's decisions being taken by a council or by a development corporation, and we see how local residents feed into that, and they feed in directly to their local representatives. In terms of the question about planning committee, I suppose I would put it the other way around, in the sense that I would put the burden on government and development corporation to prove that it would be different and sufficiently better to take those decisions at a development corporation planning committee in order to justify moving those decisions across, rather than us having to justify our existence when, as it stands, we are, as a committee, as you say, generally approving a large number of applications, and that's the same thing as was mentioned by Councillor Anna Smith, that we've got these 37,000 homes, 400,000 square metres of employment space that we've approved and have not yet been built out. So I don't think that shows that there's a justification from the point of view of trying to accelerate jobs or housing growth to do it. In terms of your point about the being bound by the same rules, that is true. And I think, again, I would turn that argument around to say, well, what's the Development Corporation Planning Committee going to do that's so different? And therefore, would it be better, and would it be justified to have this upheaval in order to have set up this whole new committee if actually it's still bound by the same national planning law? So I think in terms of the specifics of, well, why is it good to have councillors who are elected who are taking these decisions? Some would still be on that committee, as you say, on that Development Corporation Committee, but my view is that whilst, yes, it is a quasi-judicial process, so it's not one where actually you're thinking directly, this is my thing that I'm going to do in a political, from a political point of view, it's nevertheless a stronger relationship, I think, between the people who are on that committee and the residents than perhaps a group of people who may well live in and around here, they may not, but also if they've not been directly elected by people in the city, it's harder for them to claim to be speaking for those people when they're taking those decisions. It is a bit of an ineffable matter, I think. So you're right to highlight that challenge, but I think I would just turn it around to say, well, that's where the justification has to come from the government and the Development Corporation. Councillor Simon Smith.
As a council, we have a best value duty for the continuous improvement in the economy, efficiency and effectiveness of the services that we deliver. And this proposal is counter to best value and that duty. Because what it would do is it would split the planning service up into two parts. The Development Corporation would take the profitable bit, and the council will be left with the £2 million budget gap and not such an interesting local planning authority to work for. It would mean that we would lose our best officers. It would mean that we would not be able to recruit and retain people, and the service would deteriorate. And we can't afford it because there'll be such a big financial deficit, or there'll be impacts on our wider services. That is not the intention of the Development Corporation as advertised, but it would be the impact of this proposition. It's wholly wrong, and it's actually a distraction from what should be the main job of the Development Corporation. So what we're advocating is collaboration and partnership, that we work together and we add value together, and we can do that because we have a very, very competent service. So that's the first point on planning. The second point is actually about the focus of the Development Corporation. What we all know in this chamber and in the wider community is that this city is suffering from severe infrastructure deficits, and it has been for several decades, but no one has ever been able to do anything about it. The Development Corporation presents us with an opportunity to do so, and the Development Corporation should seize that. What it has to do first is to deal with the infrastructure deficit before it can even think about accelerating growth. Because as we stand, we have run out of wastewater sewage treatment capacity, and Anglian Water now been given the task to come forward with proposals on how they're going to fix that. And it could take several years and several £100 million to sort it out. We know as well that the grid is in deteriorating condition and needs to be expanded substantially in order to electrify heating and transport in the sub-region. And we all know about Adam Brooks Hospital, and we could just go on about the deficits that need to be fixed. That should be the Development Corporation's job. They don't need to interfere with planning. They get on with the infrastructure deficits because they will have the power to work across government and to fix the regulators, because it's a very weak regime, and introduce the investment that the utility providers need to make. That's the job. That's what they need to be focusing on. But in all of this, what they have assumed is that there will be continuing growth at a higher rate than average UK GDP. And that is not assured, it's not guaranteed. And they have offered no proposals whatsoever to underpin that assumption. So actually the life sciences sector in this country is subject to global competition, and the UK is putting investment into the sector, but it's also undermining it through drug pricing, and President Trump has introduced tariffs against exports into the United States, which is the biggest export market for pharmaceuticals. So it's all not well and good in the life sciences sector, and the Development Corporation and wider government need to consider what they're going to do to underpin the life science cluster in Cambridge so that growth does really happen. So, so far, I would give this a C, with promise that they could actually get a B if they start moving in the right direction. If they insist on going after our planning service, then it's an F for fail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. And thank you for highlighting the need to focus on infrastructure as well as highlighting the severe risk to our planning service from these proposals. The other thing I'd just like to come back to on the point about determination of planning applications is that as well as the actual determination of the planning application, there's quite a lot of build-up to that and a lot of engagement between developers and the planning service. Now, if that activity were to move across to a development corporation as opposed to being with the local authority, that is also something that takes away influence from the local authority and from directly elected representatives in terms of how our city develops and in terms of how these big schemes would look. So that is another important part as well as the actual specific determination in the planning committee itself. Right, Councillor Porra, you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much. I think you covered a lot of what I was going to say. I mean, yes, we need help with infrastructure. Yes, we need help with transport. Yes, we need a decent amount of money being committed to this. But I disagree with Councillor Smart to a certain extent, because I think the importance of being on planning committee, which I have been for many years, is whilst we always abide with the national planning policy framework, we understand our responsibilities, but we live in this community and we take time to explain. And whilst 90% are done by officers, that's because there aren't objections. When there's an objection, it comes in and it falls to myself, Councillor Smith, Councillor Smart, I think, cross-party to explain to residents what decisions we're making. And they see that. And it's really powerful. And I agree with Councillor Smith, we have to pay for enforcement for all of these, actually, if the DevCo takes some. That's a real cost. We'll have a reduced service. We'll risk officers leaving. And the blockers at the moment are not planning. 37,000 homes, as you said, Chair, are waiting to be built and have been consented. So I think of all planning authorities in the country, we are the best. We just won the award. And I think you were right in your summary of the debate at Council that the concerns are around plan making and development management removal, particularly where it's way outside the sites that the growth company would probably be looking at. So, I hope that will be very strong in your response. And the fact that infrastructure needs to come first, as Councillor Anna Smith alluded to. It's not just infrastructure, we need it in place in time for the schools, in time for the GP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porra. Councillor Bick?
Chair, I almost fell off my seat when it got spontaneous just then. I think it might have been a mistake not to have taken a vote on this at the full council, but we didn't, because what we've just seen is a debate about pulling back from what almost every single contribution made at the full council meeting was arguing about, which was don't create a democratic deficit. And Councillor Smart is saying, well, actually, that matters less. And I hope, Chair Leader, you will not listen to that when constructing your responses. I think the report that Stephen Kelly has written following our council meeting is a very fair and a very accurate one and covers the spread of opinion, but on the point about democratic deficit, there was hardly any variation at all. And I think it is of importance for the reason that you just gave, that it is not an event at the day of an approval being given. It is the closure of a process that leads up to that, which is about shaping an application so that it can receive consent. And the issue, I think, about the government's proposals are that even at the largest level of planning application, that matters for us as a city in particular, in a way that in some cases it will matter less in a rural area where that 1,000-dwelling community might be an independent community. But in our case, that could be Cambridge East. It could be, if we're lucky in the future, North East Cambridge, which will be part of our city. And the fact that they interlock so directly with the existing built-up area makes it really, really important that we do keep control over that process, even for those larger larger developments. And I just would like to ask, particularly in consequence of the dissent that has appeared here, would it be possible, I think it's your decision what the response to the consultation actually is, would you be willing to share that with the two other group leaders before sending it, please?
Thank you, Councillor Bick. Yes, as you rightly point out, any consultation response that the council gives is ultimately the responsibility of the leader. For this one, we had an extraordinary council meeting so we could have a lot of discussion, get everyone's views. I would be more than happy to share it with you and Councillor Bennett before submitting that response. Democratic deficit, of course, will be front and centre of that response. I think if you've listened to or read any of my contributions in public debate, then you will not be surprised to hear that. Thank you very much for your contributions. Okay, anybody else want to comment or ask any questions at this stage? Okay, thank you. All right, we will move to the vote. Sorry, we won't move to a vote. We will just look for general assent on this. So are we happy to consider, are we happy that we have considered the feedback from the council meeting that we held on the 19th of March? And are we happy that we have provided sufficient advice? That will, if you think of anything after the meeting, the door's still open to provide further advice on the preparation of the final response to the consultation on the proposal to establish a centrally-led urban development corporation for Greater Cambridge. Are we happy with that? Thank you. Okay, that is agreed. All right. Well, we will be working on that response in the coming days. The bulk of it has already been set out in the papers that went to council last week. There'll be further finessing to come, and I will, as promised, be sharing that just before submission with Councillor Bick and Councillor Bennett. Please, if you are listening, do make sure to respond to this consultation. Councillor Simon-Smith.
Chair, for the record, can you just explain why we didn't take a vote? Because of the constitutional arrangements which we all voted for. Can you just remind, because this is a public meeting, therefore I think it's important that the public know the reason for that.
Yes, so this is a government consultation. This is not a decision being taken by the council. This is a response to 13 questions that the government has set out relating to their proposal for a development corporation. We will be responding as a council to that under the constitution, which we agreed in May last year. It's the leader who has ultimate responsibility for any council submission to a consultation. However, it was important in this case to get everyone's views on that. It wouldn't have worked to have a vote on the precise wording of every element of that response, but it was nevertheless extremely helpful to have those views, and they will be taken into account. Thank you. Okay, we're on to item 12, local nature reserve designations in Cherry Hinton. I will begin by asking Councillor Smart to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chair. This item seeks Cabinet approval for the designation of 2 new local nature reserves at Fulbourn Road Open Space and Church End in Cherry Hinton. These important sites have demonstrated strong community support through our recent public consultation, and their designation represents another practical step in delivering our biodiversity strategy vision for a net gain in nature across every ward of the city. As set out in the report, LNR status will provide statutory protection, raise the profile of these valued green spaces, and enable enhanced habitat management and monitoring. This supports our corporate goals to tackle biodiversity and climate crises, guarantee equitable access to nature-rich spaces, and modernise the Council's leadership towards an environmentally conscious and fair city. If approved today, we will progress formal declaration with Natural England during 2026 and work with partners and local communities to deliver new management plans for both sites. These local nature reserve designations are a positive and strategic step towards our nature recovery in Cambridge.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Councillor Smart. Are there any comments or questions on this? Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm very happy to support these recommendations. 2 points. When we, over a year and a half ago, when we as a council, I believe unanimously committed to be a butterfly-friendly city, one of the things that I learned following that and the work that we did and the very successful butterfly trail around Cambridge was actually the Fulbourn Road open space. One of the reasons that it was being put forward, I believe, to be a nature reserve was because of the really vital and increased habitat there for butterflies. So I think that's really positive. And also to work in with the county's work on nature networks and the Cambridge Nature Network, one of the really important aspects is not to have large, fantastic, biodiverse sites which are sort of isolated or on their own, but to have networks so that wildlife and things like butterflies can move around. And so this providing smaller but new nature reserves is a really added benefit to the city, and not just for its human residents, but for its other flora and fauna. So, but it's good for the humans as well, for our physical and our mental health. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Anna Smith.
I just wanted to endorse what Councillor Moore was saying about that importance of, in effect, creating biodiversity corridors. That's so crucial. This is something Councillor Smart has very kindly agreed to come and speak to some residents in my ward about creating some biodiversity corridors between green spaces, and that is absolutely crucial, and very grateful for the time that he's going to give us to that. But yeah, couldn't agree more. The more of these we can have, the better, because it really does improve the environment for our whole city.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Young, would you like to comment on this one?
Just to say that the Scrutiny Committee was very much in support of this.
Okay, fantastic. All right. There's nothing more. Councillor Smart, would you like to say a few words before we go to the recommendation?
Just extremely briefly, Chair, just to say that officers and me looked into these sites very closely before we came to this stage. I was very clear with officers. I wanted to make sure it was the right site in the right place, that local residents wanted it, and that's one of the big things on this, is that lots of residents were really keen to have this designation. And, you know, they're small sites. I crossed that word out in my presentation, but they are small, which has been said by Rosie. And, you know, that's pertinent to these sites, that they're important because of that. It doesn't need to be a great big sort of Milton Country Park. It can still have a lot of effect on how we feel about open space as a person, as a human being in a space which can be quite small, quite like being in a living room almost, you know, where you feel cosy and it's a comfortable place, and it could be good for your mental health to be in that space, go for a walk with a dog or whatever. So they are important, and I really support them coming forward. I think they're an important part of what, you know, the sort of portfolio of open spaces we have in the city, and they will add significantly to that, especially for local people or also other people that come to those sites. So, yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know that Councillor Russ McPherson has also done a lot of work over the years in Cherry Hinton on these two sites, particularly the Church End site. Okay, we'll move to the recommendation then. So we've got the recommendations on page 651. Number 1 is to approve the proposed local nature reserve designations of Fulbourn Road Open Space Cherry Hinton, and the second is to approve the proposed local nature reserve designation of Church End Cherry Hinton. Do we agree to those designations? Yes, that is agreed. Fantastic, thank you. Okay, next up is the Greater Cambridge Authority Monitoring Report for 2024 to 25. Councillor Wade, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. So once again, our planning officers have done an excellent job in producing this comprehensive report on all aspects of planning development across the city and South Cambs. It's an impressive piece of work. Monitoring is essential in order to establish what has been happening in Greater Cambridge, what is happening now, and what may happen in the future, and what needs to be done to achieve policies and targets. We produce the Authority Monitoring Report every year, which reports on the previous monitoring year from the 1st of April to 31st of March. It contains information about the performance of planning policies set out in the adopted local plan and area action plans, and also provides a general portrait of social, economic and environmental conditions in the city. There is much in the report on nature, parks, biodiversity, net gain. So many thanks again to the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Are there any comments or questions on this? Councillor Moore?
This report actually highlights much of what has just been said in the discussion about the DevCo and how planning across both of the councils is not the problem with any supposed lack of development in the area, and highlights why we need to keep planning democratically within the two councils, but have the DevCo to support the infrastructure improvements that we very much need. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Councillor Simon-Smith?
Well, I think it's worth noting that the council, through its investment partnership with Hill, has been the biggest provider of social housing in the city during this monitoring period.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Smith?
I think Councillor Simon-Smith might mean in the country, but not in the city. You said... Well, one of the biggest providers of, I think we're the biggest provider of social housing for a district council anywhere in the country, aren't we?
Yeah, we're very good.
That wasn't actually the point I was wanting to make.
Not saying we're the best, but we're the top one, yeah.
Absolutely. The point I actually wanted to make was to emphasise, one, how good it is to see that we have these excellent key partnerships with different bodies, but also just to raise a couple of things that we might want to add to item 7, which is the Cambridge and Peterborough Borough Combined Authority report. So thinking particularly on 7.1, I'm really glad to see the bus franchising scheme is mentioned there.
You're on the wrong item, sorry, Councillor Smith. I think, are you looking at the next item?
I'm looking at strategic
policy
partnerships.
And partnership. Yeah, we're on the authority monitoring report, I'm afraid. No worries, we can take that in a couple of minutes.
Well, at least I've read the papers. That's
okay. Yeah,
just can't read the numbers.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
To be fair, we are on
I'll
the
come back to that one.
We're on the 13th item, to be fair, so I think we're all getting to that stage. Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we've done now on that item. Lovely. We can go to the recommendations, which is just to look at page 661, where we agree the Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council Authority Monitoring Report, and we delegate any further minor editing changes to the City Council and District Council Joint Director of Planning in consultation with the lead Cabinet Member for Planning and Transport. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the officers who put this together. Okay, next up, we do have the Strategic Policy and Partnerships Report for 2024 to 25. So I'm going to introduce this one. This is just a summary of the various different partnerships that we have and the work that's been going on over the last year. Cabinet members and senior officers represent the council and residents in several different strategic partnerships, so in areas such as economy, health, community safety, and this report provides an update on what those partnerships have been up to in recent years. The report also highlights a number of national reforms and initiatives that will potentially impact on us as a council and a city, and that includes things like local government reorganisation, of course, integrated care boards and police services being reformed, new place-based approaches as well that the government will be piloting, and the government's looking at social investment and the impact economy as well, which is something we're already looking to take advantage of ourselves here in Cambridge with our Greater Cambridge Impact Fund. The proposal here is that the Council's strategy and policy team keep abreast of those initiatives and they identify opportunities and good practice for the Council. Of course, there's also a huge volume of work to be done on local government reorganisation. So, anyone like to give any comments on these? Councillor Moore.
I've just got a question. We've got the report in our pack and then there's a separate, and I haven't had time to read the separate one. Is it different? I couldn't see if there were, and if there are changes, could you just highlight them, please?
Yes, sorry, that was the previous year's report, in fact. So that was just an error in the way that the report was published, but that was the 2024-25 report. The latest one that you've got is the 2025-26 report. Sorry about that.
I might possibly have a
Councillor Anna
comment on
Smith,
this one.
yeah.
Right. So where I was, item 7, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority report. There's a couple of things I wonder if we might want to add into this. So I'm really pleased to see, as I said, that the bus franchising scheme has been flagged. I wonder if the 2 initiatives to provide lower cost or free transport to people could be highlighted as well. So that's the pre-9:30 travel for people on concessionary bus passes that is free within the whole Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area, and the Tiger Pass, particularly since this also links into the work we're doing with young people, because the young people represented particularly by Citizens UK were very instrumental in the campaign to save the Tiger Pass this year. So I think it's worth probably highlighting this. And I don't see, and I'm sorry because I was doing a quick scan of these new papers, but I don't see the awarding of being a Youth Guarantee Trailblazer in here. I think that would be really important to mention because that's really something very significant. And I did just want to highlight, because it may otherwise get lost, and I think it's just really worth emphasising, that the Council's Region of Learning team and the digital badging work that they've been doing for several years has been now picked up by the Combined Authority, is being showcased by them, and I think that's really great news, and particularly strong congratulations to all of those, some of whom are in this room, who have worked really hard to ensure that that Region of Learning and digital badging strategy has got to that point.
Thank you very much for those points, Councillor Smith. Councillor Rachel Wade.
Just a clarification, the Tiger Pass was actually one of the pledges that came forward in our youth assembly, which is part of our youth strategy, so it links into that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further comments? Councillor Todd Jones, you sit on several of these partnerships, so thank you for the work you've been doing.
Yeah, I was just going to reference pages 3 to 4 and the work of the Community Safety Partnership, which has, I think it's been my involvement in it. I'm really impressed by the excellent work they do, and it's really laid out well in the report. I would mention that in Appendix B, I think it is, on page 15, that it's maybe this is a hangover from our past roles, but it does reference the Executive Council for Community Safety, the voting member of the Community Safety Partnership. I think it's now a cabinet member with a slightly different title, but a somewhat pedantic point. Thanks. No, the most important thing is the great work that is outlined in the report. Thanks.
Thank you for both of those comments, Councillor Todd Jones. Councillor Smith.
So at this point, I have to say that I'm chair of the GCP Joint Assembly, and just looking at this report on the key priorities for 26-27, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that there's a forecast funding problem as GCP works through the statutory processes and approvals for the sustainable transport routes, and sorting out the medium-term funding for delivery of those schemes, I think needs to be a priority that's flagged in this report. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Smith, and for your work on the Joint Assembly. Okay, Any further comments? No. All right, thank you. Okay, we will go to the vote. So if you look at the separate report that you've received, then on page 1 of that report, there are some recommendations. Are we agreed with those recommendations? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That's agreed. Item 15 then is risk management, the risk management strategy and framework. That's on page 691 of your packs. So following a number of changes across the council, including staffing structures and then the introduction of performance management framework, changes we've also made to our council governance, we've done a major review of the risk management strategy and framework. Following that review, there was consideration of the framework and the strategy at Civic Affairs and Audit Committee on the 9th of March 2026. This update has focused on ensuring that set out in clearly understood terms the purpose of risk management and the way that we achieve that in practice as a council. So, are there any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Anna Smith.
First of all, really excellent, thorough piece of work. Congratulations to officers on this. And I have to say, I do just want to shout out what I think is one of the best kind of comments in effect, the footnotes that I've seen, which is implication 6.1, relevant risks. The risk is not having an up-to-date risk management strategy and framework. And I think that sums it up very well.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, any further comments on this item? Councillor Smart.
A bit left of centre, but there's risk management. I mean, we have that all the time. But is hazard management a part of risk management, or is that just something we just don't do? Because in my understanding of my dealing with risk management things, hazards are things to be avoided, but risks can be managed. So, I mean, there must be things in the council that are potential hazards, but I guess they become a part of risk management and they don't get to the hazard stage.
Thank you, Councillor
I'm truly interested.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Jane, would you like to respond?
Hazards are part of risk management, so there is a hierarchy. I'm not going to go into all of the detail, but can you remove the risk? Then you come through from mitigate right through to PPE and other mechanisms for protecting people. So knowing there is a hazard is just part of the overarching risk management process, and it's working out how we manage it.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, I think then if there's nothing further, we will move to the vote on this one. So the recommendations are on page 691. So do we approve the revised risk management framework and strategy as set out in the papers? And do we also delegate authority to approve minor changes and amendments to the Chief Operating Officer? Okay, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Right, item 16 on the agenda is the quarterly performance report. So I'm going to introduce this one. Thank you, Jane, again, for setting this out. Really good to have this. The primary purpose of the report is to provide an overview of what's happening in the council, enables us to make good decisions, have effective scrutiny of what's going on at the council, and also give public visibility of some of those strategic decisions as well as day-to-day operational activities of the council. By doing this consistently on a quarterly basis with a high-level factual snapshot, we've got a good idea of the overall health and performance of the council. It's presented very nicely and clearly, and it also is complementary to the more in-depth annual report that we have. The way it's put together brings together performance measures, finance, and risk information all within the one report, and that gives us a good idea of how we're doing as a council. So, there's lots of really good and useful information in there. Are there any questions or comments on it at this point? Yeah, I see none from Cabinet members. Councillor Bick, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to endorse what you just said, Chair, about the usefulness of this report, which I'm going to qualify a bit with a further question, which is it seems to be rather late in the sense that it's reporting us to a period at the end of December, and we're now nearly, well, at the end of March, and typically, like third quarter forecast, that the financial component of this would be something that would be very nice to have available at the time of the budget. And it just seems a pity that, that a really informative, really helpful report wasn't this year available a month earlier than this. The question I wanted to ask is in relation to the HRA. The report tells us that the projection for spending for the financial year indicates a 3.1 million spending above budget, and I just wondered if Councillor Bird could comment on that and let us know what that was on account of.
Thank you, Councillor Bick, and that's exactly the sort of scrutiny that this report enables. So thank you for that question. Just before I go to Councillor Bird, the question about the date of publication, Jane, are you able to respond to that one?
Yeah, it is a report to Cabinet. This March date was the agreed date. It's very difficult to get it by the second month from the quarter end because of just all of the information that's got to be collated and checked. We do look really hard and work very closely with Jodie and other colleagues to pull this together at how quickly we can get this information together. I do take the point, it was a challenge this quarter because of the timings of the various meetings. So.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Bird, would you like to respond to the question regarding HRA?
Yeah, I'd like to pass it on to Jodie and then come back after Jodie says something. If that's okay?
That's fine, thank you. Jodie, would you like to comment?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in regards to the HRA overspend, I think the main reasons are set out on pages 743, 744 of the report pack. And we discussed this, obviously, at quarter two as well, and as we went through the budget setting process. We have got some quite significant structural overspending issues around repairs, around responses to damp condensation and mould, particularly in response to Arab's Law. We've also had significant spend on interim waking watches this year at a number of sites for fire safety reasons. Those are now beginning to wind down, so that spend won't be ongoing. But clearly, as part of this year's budget setting round, there was significant investment. We increased the HRA revenue budgets by over £2 million a year from 26-27 onwards, and there's lots of work going on with the housing teams at the moment to, essentially make sure that we can remain within those revised budgets as we go into 26-27.
Thank you, Jodie. Just before I bring in Councillor Bird, we need to take a vote to continue because we've hit the 3-hour mark. So are we happy to continue for up to a further half hour? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you very much. Yes, I did say up to a further half hour, but we'll try and keep it less than that. Councillor Bird, would you like to offer some further comments?
Yeah, just to say that the officers have done a fantastic job on the budget this year. We've been through this twice now, and it's important that we have the extra money to do the DCMs and repairs, and I think we're doing a grand job.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Bick, you rightly highlighted an area of concern, but as you've seen, we're putting very significant investment into this area for the coming year, and we will be keeping a very close eye on how that is used to bear down on those costs that we're experiencing and to provide a better service for residents. Thank you very much. Did you have a further comment or did you have a further question on this, or was that good? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else like to comment or ask questions on this report? No. Okay. We will move to the recommendations then. We have page 717 of your reports. The recommendation is simply to note the content of the quarterly performance report. Is that agreed? That is agreed. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for a good meeting. Lots of really positive initiatives, lots of very interesting information. Good evening. Have a good night. Thank you very much.